Welcome back, my friends, to the Dime Store Cinema, where we talk movies and culture. Today, I'd like to spend just a brief moment talking about the 2020 film, The Wolf of Snow Hollow. This is a movie that came out that I haven't heard anyone say anything about. I haven't seen anything about it. I didn't even see the trailer for. I happened to be looking through Prime and saw this here. I actually thought that it was a different movie, and so when I started watching it, I realized that it was much different than I was anticipating. But I want to talk about it because here's an example of a mid to low budget movie coming along, being extremely competently made and being quite entertaining, but because of the way the system is set up these days, these kind of movies seem to fly under the radar and not make their money back. So the budget for this movie is around $2 million, which for Hollywood pictures is considered quite low, and it did not come close to making that money back, at least in the theaters, but it was something of a limited release, so that doesn't really surprise me too much. I imagine they're trying to recoup a good bit of that on the back end through Prime and other such streaming services. But it is a shame. This movie was surprisingly good, and it might have been due to low expectations, but I really enjoyed the way this movie approached and presented a somewhat overused and cliched premise. So the movie's about a small town. There are a series of very grisly murders. The current sheriff is too sick to be able to handle this type of case, so his son takes the mantle. So this son, played by Jim Cummings, who is also the director, it's only really ever done two other feature-length films. For that lack of experience, seems very competent, has a very particular voice. It seems, at least from one of his other movies, that he kind of has a type of film that he likes to do, or a sense of being a manicness to his films. So, and this is no exception. So he is failing to be able to deduce who the killer is. In such a small town, people start turning on him because since there's so few people in town, they anticipate they would be able to find who this murderer is. Then, of course, the health of his father is weighing on him. He has a teenage daughter who's very rebellious towards him, partially because of his own actions, but we'll kind of get to that. And he's trying to juggle all of these things. And what's fun about the movie, or one of my favorite aspect of the movie, is his decline. They do a very good job of presenting this timeline of his mental decline to where he just hits absolute rock bottom. The way that they present this, it's very darkly comedic, but I very much appreciate the way they do it. Jim Cummings' performance is very good. He does a very good job of playing that rage and bewilderment bubbling underneath the surface, and then occasionally it just boiling over and it comes out in somewhat humorous ways and sometimes very horrifying ways. I really liked the way that they followed that out and how they allowed it to be a progression as opposed to it coming out of nowhere or it just being, you know, up and down. There was a very much a through line of progression of it building until it just an absolute collapse and rock bottom. Alcoholism, being unable to contain himself, assaulting a minor for doing things with his daughter. There's this great progression. That's my favorite part of this, because it's presented almost as a mystery, but the mystery isn't really a mystery that's being left up to the audience. There's not really anything that would suggest who the villain is, so that we can kind of piece together with them. No, it's kind of in the dark, almost like these cops are for the audience. You know, we don't really know. And the idea is the killer is trying to frame these as if it's a werewolf attack. He's only attacking during the full moon. He has a big wolf costume, and this is a spoiler, obviously. Big wolf costume to make himself look like it. So he's framing it out to be like werewolf attacks, and you know, the town people start getting nervous about that, and yeah. So there's all of that comes into play here. But really, what makes this stand out among all the other small town, gotta solve grisly murder plot devices, what makes it stand out is not only the werewolf aspect of it, because it's kind of combining those two things, which many werewolf movies do, but then on top of that is Jim Cummings' performance in that rapid decline into hitting rock bottom. And I really like the way that it culminates with him hitting rock bottom. It gets to the point where he goes to AA because he starts drinking to excess. And his demeanor when he is going to people's homes to return evidence when they think that they've caught the correct killer. His demeanor, it's so much different than at the beginning of the movie and throughout the movie, and it is the demeanor of a defeated person, someone who is just done. And so that performance is really, really good, and it adds this. When he comes across the killer and through conversations and other things like that, he puts it together. The way that he presented the realization, the way that he acted it was very good and compelling, much more interesting than what you see in a lot of these types of movies. So coming from the perspective of a low-budget movie using a very overused plot and idea, it was presented in a way that made it somewhat fresh and interesting. Now, you know, this isn't a great piece of cinema. It's not something that I don't think that anyone is going to really write too much about. I don't think that it's going to become a cult classic or anything like that, but it was a highly enjoyable movie and a perfect example of that mid to low budget film that we sorely lack these days. It's a great entertaining film. It's not a blockbuster, and it's not an indie. It's right in that center sweet spot, and we don't get those movies anymore, and it's a shame because it was a highly enjoyable movie. And as I mentioned, a very dark comedy. It goes from being kind of almost funny, and then there are scenes of horrific violence and everything in between. But as I mentioned, the thing that made it interesting was really that that emotional and psychological progression of the sheriff. So it's currently on Prime. I definitely recommend it. I think that it would be a great weekend watch. Like I said, it's not a blockbuster, but if you miss those mid-budget, just fun movies, then this is a great example of that, just coming out a year ago. And being able to pull that out off and release that in 2020, given COVID and everything like that, I think speaks to it even more, that they were able to get this done, get it together, and then release it during everything that was going on with COVID. So hats off to Jim Cummings. I hope that he continues to make films. Like I said, I'm unfamiliar with one of his other films, but one of his films seems to almost be kind of in that same vein, or at least his character, because he seems to be a director who likes to star in his own films, which I don't necessarily have anything negative to say about that, but it can speak to a person's ego. It can speak towards someone putting themselves into a role that they're not necessarily the best for. However, if he does have a niche where he is writing films around a particular type of character, which, once again, we don't have a large enough filmography for me to be able to determine that, but at least two of his films, that seems to kind of be the case, which that can be dangerous because you can get it can start becoming a little redundant, and you need to have your own voice, you need to have your own vision, kind of be known for something, but it can't be too similar, or it starts to, people just won't want to watch your movies. I liken it to Red Hot Chili Peppers. They have that one good song. The problem is all of their songs sound like that. So it's, why listen to an album when I can just listen to that one song? If you've heard that song, you pretty much know what the whole album sounds like. I know that's going to make people mad. My wife and I have determined that the world is comprised of two type of people. Those who love Red Hot Chili Peppers and those who can't stand them, and we happen to both reside in the latter in that case. But as I said, that one song's good, but it sounds like all their songs. In any case, once again, I do recommend seeing this. I think it's worth the watch. I think that it's better than most of the stuff that's on streaming services these days to watch. I also saw that on Prime they have Faults back. I did I think a very short video of Faults. I don't know if it was on this channel. It might have been on one of my previous ones. I want to revisit it because I remember really, really liking that movie, and that's in this vein as well, where it's a mid to low budget movie that came out that surprised me with how good it was. So I want to revisit that one and then talk about it more in depth, because according to my memory, that movie really resonated with me and I liked it a whole lot. So hopefully within the next week or so, I will do another video of Faults, kind of a revisiting of that and seeing if it holds up. In any case, thank you once again for joining me. Toast to y'all. I do appreciate your time. I would appreciate a like, a comment, and a subscribe. I'm not one that really likes to beg for that kind of thing, but I would appreciate it. Or if you have any movie topics you want to talk about, please feel free to comment. I always enjoy hearing about movies. I love talking about stories, any kind of story, any kind of movie, literature, anything. I love it. So please feel free to comment about anything you want to talk about in that regard. Until next time, my friends, this has been Justin C. Bartlett with the Dime Store Cinema, reminding you all to fill your lives with amazing stories.